crew up here of just a few people that we're performing these experiments that have been put together by all these scientists around the world that have dedicated, years of their lives to understanding these experiments and creating them, really. And we then carry them out, which I think we all feel very honored to get to do that. But we don't have the same level of understanding as those that have spent years of their lives working on this research on the ground. And so that's another aspect up here, where making sure when we go to work on an experiment, we know what we're doing enough so that we don't lose science in the process.
And time delays might be a factor, as Administrator Nelson. As Administrator Nelson discussed, and when it comes to International Space Station, it's like about a second or so. But when it comes to the moon and beyond, it might be several minutes or up to 20 minutes for Mars. So we are using International Space Station as a test bed to prepare for that, and we are moving forward to it.
Okay, now, I'm really excited about some of the advances that you mentioned in stem cell research and medical treatment, and whatever you can share with that, not only that you already mentioned bone loss, but anything with regard to crystal and zero G. Tell us about this groundbreaking research focused on strokes, cancer, whatever it is.
Well, it turns out gravity is a very strong force, and it tends to, on Earth, overshadow many of the smaller forces. And so whether it's physical processes, chemical processes, biological processes, or human physiological processes, when we study things in space without the influence of gravity, we can study some of these smaller effects, some of these smaller forces and their influence on the processes, and it gives us a much deeper insight into the physics or the biology of whatever scientific experiment we're looking at. And so it really gives us a fundamental knowledge by studying things under weightless conditions. And for example, if we take protein crystal growth or material science, gravity plays such an important role that it limits the size of the crystal that you can grow. And up here, without that effect of gravity, crystals or materials, metals, for example, can grow much larger, and it gives you an opportunity to understand their growth mechanisms without it being affected by gravity.
Let me add a little bit about the protein crystallization experiment in space. In space, under microgravity, we can get better quality protein crystallization, and by analyzing that, we can know the detailed 3D structure of a protein, and by using a computer, we can easily narrow down the candidate proteins effectively using the results of the space experiments. That would lead to the enhancement of new medicine development.
Space shuttle 38 years ago, and it was dramatic. I was very crude in my comparison to what you do today, where I had no temperature control, I had no vibration control, everything was done by hand, and yet the dramatic difference of identical crystals grown on Earth as compared to grown in microgravity was quite dramatic. Tell us some more about the cell research that you're doing. For example, it looks like that, and as a result, you lose a lot of stem cells. They die of death in space. They are suspended there, they're not all.
Yeah, so I think the study we just wrapped up using stem cells, and kind of as both you and Andy mentioned, when you have gravity, it overshadows a lot of things. And for up here in this weightless environment, in general, cell cultures can grow more like they do back on Earth, where they're three-dimensional, like tissues would be. And so the study we just wrapped up on bone loss, that was using stem cells, again, to see if we can understand the mechanisms behind bone loss, and whether that's from spaceflight or from aging, and use that then to counter it, either through treatment or prevention. And so, yeah, just a lot of incredible research, I think, that's directly applicable and will benefit us back home.
Thank you, Administrator Nelson and Dr. Carnell. We'll now turn it over to media on the phone and on social media to ask their questions. If you're on the phone, please press *1. If you're watching on social media, please submit your question using #AskNASA. So we'll start here on the phone with Elizabeth Howell with Space.com.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for your time. This question is for Andreas. Can you talk a little bit about the virtual reality headset that you're working on with the exercise bike on the International Space Station and the experience of what it's like to be using that as opposed to going without? Thank you.
It's actually one of my absolute favorite activities on board the space station. It allows me to bike on 5 different routes through my home country, Denmark, including a mountain bike path through the woods, a path through the center of Copenhagen, and a path along the beach. And it is a game changer. It really makes a difference. There's just something about when you see yourself biking up a hill in the virtual reality headset, you just have more motivation to pedal a little bit harder than you otherwise would when you're just looking into the wall of the space station. I absolutely love it. It also connects me with nature. I feel like I'm out in the countryside biking, and it's wonderful. It really is. We live on board the space station, which is a very synthetic environment. We can't go outside. We're not in contact with nature, but this is as close as it gets, and I use it every single time I exercise on the bike.
Thank you, Andreas and Elizabeth. We'll go to our next question here on the phone bridge. Jim with NASATech.net.
Oh, thank you for taking my question, and thank you for doing this. By the way, I'm talking to you by phone, so whoever is responding, aside from Bill Nelson, I know your voice, if you could identify yourself. I'm very excited, and I've written a number of stories about the 3D printing of human tissue. And I'm curious about when the printing is being done, what is the raw material that's being printed? Is it human tissue that's been collected from any of you, or that's been transported up to the space station from Earth? And when this is actually done in real time for people, as one of you mentioned, whenever there is a transplant, for example, that's needed, what would be the process? Would some sort of stem cells or whatever be collected from the person needing, say, a heart, and those would be transported up to the space station and used as raw material in the 3D printing? And after the 3D printing was done, would there be a period of growth or some sort of nurturing before it's sent back down to Earth? Thank you.
Well, this is Andreas Mogensen answering. Those are all very, very good questions. We are still in a very early stage of testing the technology. Currently, we are receiving syringes from Earth with cells in them, and then we're setting up the printer and letting it print with those cells from the syringes. So they're not our cells. What we would do in the future, those are good questions. I don't think, at least us up here, are not able to answer that. And I think it depends on what we discover in this process, which, as I mentioned, it's still very early stages.
Thank you for your question. We'll now move on to Yami Yuri.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you for taking my question. Yusuke Tomiyama, the Yomiuri Shimbun, Japanese Daily. My question is to Furukawa-san. Through your experiment on orbit, what kind of technology in space is most promising for business? What do you think about this?
Okay, thank you for the question. Let me talk about cell gravity sensing experiment, which is from Japanese Space Exploration Agency. It tests the researchers' hypothesis how individual animal cells detect gravity. Previous studies indicate that individual animal cells detect gravity, but how it does so is greatly unknown. So it tests, analyzes the changes in tension in cell fibers that happens under microgravity. And that is a very upstream phenomenon, and followed by signal transduction and multiple biochemical reactions that lead to the lower stream osteoporosis, bone loss, or muscle atrophy. So understanding the very upstream phenomena could help prevent or treat the bone loss or muscle atrophy encountered during spaceflight. And as we discussed, possibly to the similar pathology on Earth.
And we'll take our final question. Elizabeth Howell with Space.com.
Hello, this question is for Jasmine. Can you talk a little more about the auroras that you saw on the space station and photographed a few days ago? And if you have some time, some photography tips. Thank you.
Can you just repeat the last part of the question, please?
Photography tips. Thank you.
Okay, I heard you were asking about auroras. I think I missed the last part of the question, but I will say I had never seen an aurora from the Earth, and it was something I was really excited to come see up here. I've been looking out for them since I got up here, and the auroras from up here are spectacular. Everything about looking back at the Earth from up here I just I can't possibly tell you in words how beautiful our planet is. And that night in particular, it just, the green, and there's some green, some reds, they just swept across the surface of the earth. And really, looking back at the earth from up here, I love it because every time I look out the window, I'm in awe. And every time it's a little different, even if we're passing over the same part of the earth, whether the lights are different or the clouds or the seasons, the sun angle. So every single time, Pacific night was definitely a highlight, seeing the aurora pass over the earth.
So that's almost all of the time that we have for today. Andreas, Jasmine, Satoshi, thank you all so much, and we can't wait to see you back on planet Earth soon. Administrator, would you like to share some final thoughts?
Hey guys, the research that you're doing is a part of why we're in the golden age of space exploration. Thank you for what you're doing. We are going to keep the station going for another 6 years. At least, and now you are finally having breakthroughs in your research. So keep it going. Thank you, and we Earthlings are going to be beneficiaries of what you are doing. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Administrator, and everyone for joining us.
Thank you very much, Senator Nelson.
Station, this is Houston ACR, and that concludes the event.
Communications. Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event? WCAI, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Patrick Flannery with WCAI. How do you hear me?
Hi, Patrick. I have you loud and clear, and welcome aboard the International Space Station.
Laurel, this is a first for me. I've never spoken to anyone in space. Would you give us a sense of what you're looking at right now? What can you see in front of you?
Well, right now I'm in the Japanese module on Space Station. There's a lot of science that happens in here. We do a lot of our biology experiments in. There's a lot of